What is God's will for your life? Your church, your ministry? Bam, I asked it. The number one question in the entire world. What's God's will for our lives? The vast majority of pastors even wonder what the point is. Why not just send the people to the megachurch down the street? What's the point of all this? We quip that the sheep have teeth, but it's not really as funny as it once was, is it? I've been there. I've been through the process. I was a Marine for 10 years, a missionary in the Philippines for 12, and I've pastored in the US close to 10 years now. There's challenges, but you've been called. You really have. You've been called. And understanding the call is an important part of this. When I first went to the Philippines with my wife and 3 small children, we almost instantly were caring for 27 kids, and we had $400 a month in support. That was it. I never once questioned the hardship because I knew that I was called. We lived in a raised hut. I ate rice and eggs for a year. I lost about 50 pounds, but I knew that I was called, and so it was okay. Later, as I learned to hear God's voice more clearly day to day, the anxiety of it all lifted, and I experienced such freedom. The burnout left. See, this is the cure for the burnout, is learning to hear God's voice and understanding the call and the purpose and lighting that fire once again. We can all experience this. There's a number of things that go into it, and I'm going to unpack them in this video. So make sure you like this video and subscribe if you want to hear more about how we learn to hear God's voice and understand His will for our lives. Understanding God's will for you and for your ministry hinge on hearing His voice as a lifestyle, which is the John 15 abiding or remaining in Jesus. Working through some exercises and getting feedback and then aligning our lives to the will of God. One of the biggest, if not the biggest problem that I've seen in the American church is that no one is showing people how to abide or to build a relationship with Jesus. I hear people talk all the time. I even heard it today, a pastor talking about how we need to develop that relationship, that close relationship with Jesus, which is the abiding or the remaining from John 15. But then they never say how we actually do it. No one ever showed me how to worship. No one ever showed me how to pray with listening first, how to cultivate a hunger and how to get God's heart. Never mind how to walk out ministry effectively. I get classes sometimes, but what I want to know is how I hear God's voice and I find peace even in the midst of an argument with my wife or when I get cut off in traffic. See, this hinges on hearing His voice regularly, and we're going to get there. Once it's laid out for you, it isn't rocket science. So here we go. I'm going to lay it out right now. You might not think that you hear God or that you hear God all that well. You try and you focus, you go into your closet or your prayer closet, you go out on a retreat to conferences, you focus real hard. That's all of us, bro. It doesn't work all that great. You might even have tried out some spiritual disciplines, which are wonderful when you're actually shown how to walk them out effectively, but most of us don't get this kind of discipleship. So the first question is, are you actually hearing God clearly on a regular basis? And I mean really clearly. I believe that if we can hear the Father like Jesus did, our relationship with God and our ministries will look like Jesus. In John 5, verses 19 and 20, Jesus said that He could only do what He saw the Father doing because the Father loves the Son with this brotherly phileo love. It's all about our relationship with God, and this is what our discipleship should start with, both for ourselves and for our people. And we're going to get there together. The good news is you absolutely can hear from God, and so can your people. And we can hear from God clearly, and you can hear from God clearly as part of your ministry lifestyle. In the Philippines, when I first had gone there on the very first trip, I went out one night and I was looking for street kids. I was under Quezon Bridge and I found the kids in Manila. They had me singing karaoke, 200 or 300 kids gathered around, not because of my singing ability, believe me. They were just curious what I was doing out there. But about 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, the little kids started to pull out cardboard and go to sleep on the street by themselves. God stirred something inside of me. Those were the big things that I heard God in at that point. Over time, I continued to hear the big things, but on April 12th of 2021, I'd been sick and bedridden for 3 years. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know what else to do. I started to connect with God through music for the first time in a long time. And as I did, I saw Jesus in the corner of the room and He healed me. It was like nothing I've ever experienced. And I'm so thankful. But I realized in that moment, if He could meet me like that, He was a God of experience. It was my first experience with God. And if He could do that with me, He could do that with anyone. A few months later, I was driving by Columbine High School and I heard God speak very clearly. Jack, I've seen your ministry and now I'm going to show you mine. And everything inside of me said, yes, Lord, this is what I want. Holy Spirit, come and lead your ministry and get me out of the way. And so I began to work on hearing God's voice day after day. And I learned some exercises along the way that are really helpful. Exercises like giving a word to each person that I encountered for an entire month. I did that in June of 2022. It was hard, and I grew so much in hearing God's voice. Or sometimes I'll go out and make sure that I give one word a day to people that I'm engaging with. Not to create a quota or anything, but just to make it part of my lifestyle that I'm actually asking God. Sometimes I'll go out and I'll ask God for Bible characters for people or a color that that person reminds God of. And God starts to give me words. And as I engage with the person, I can start to get feedback. I'll go through these exercises in another video. And the beauty is that they aren't just for you, but they'll help your ministry leaders grow as well. So what's the purpose of these exercises? In a lot of ways, it's learning to get rid of the part about me and starting to hear God's voice more clearly. What I want to know is it my voice? Is it the devil, which is actually pretty easy to discern, or is it actually God? I want to hear God. It's easy to tell when the voice is in the head is the devil because it will be mean, nasty, condescending, produce guilt. That's obviously not God. But how do you know when it's God's voice versus when it's your own? That's a lot more challenging. We've all had those moments. We think God's saying to pray the lottery. We don't want to admit it, but we do stuff like this sometimes. Or we take a little bit of a risk with God. This prayer meeting we believe God's saying is going to take off. Then 3 people show up the first time, no one shows up the second week, and we don't know what went wrong. Usually we blame it on the people. These people don't take prayer seriously. They're not prayer warriors. We need the prayer warriors. But most of the time, it isn't the people's fault. It comes back on us as the leaders. And the biggest problem with us is that no one really shows us how to walk this stuff out. If God is saying that this is a prayer meeting that needs to take place, the people should be excited about it. So we've got to work on hearing God's voice. His voice is different than our own. And when we're aware, we can start to discern his voice and what he has for us. Here's an example from my own life. It's embarrassing, but it's true. Some of this stuff is really embarrassing. I used to ask God for answers through Bible verses. I'd usually get one of 2 things. The first thing is that God would send me, or I thought it was God, sending me to Psalm 151. I go to Psalm 151. There's obviously only 151 Psalms. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. There's no verse there. The second way is that I'd be asking a question about having compassion on people, and I get to a verse that says something about dashing the babies against the rocks. I'm serious. Like, I get this from time to time. It just didn't work for me. It's different for some people, but this isn't how God speaks to me. Unfortunately, I went through this process for more than 20 years, and I never really learned how to hear God's voice effectively. It wasn't God sending me to Psalm 151. It wasn't God sending me to these other verses. I think out of all the times I did that in over 20 years, one time I went to a verse that was actually speaking to me. It just doesn't work that way for me. It's different for each person. I had a pastor that 2 times in his life, he needed to hear from God. It was a major life decision. And so he went out into the wilderness to hear from God. He's out in the middle of the wilderness in Idaho. He sees some color on the ground. He goes over and there's a balloon. And inside the balloon is a note that tells him exactly what to do. 2 times this happened to him. Again, embarrassing, but I tried it. Didn't work that way for me. I think I found a Skittles wrapper. We have to get better at discerning God's voice and the way that works for us. This starts with listening for what his voice actually sounds like and how it's different from our own. God's voice has a tone to it, a quality, a weight. It hits different. But how do we know? We listen and then we engage with God. We do what we believe God's saying. And then as we do, we get feedback in it. If you think that God said it and you act on it, one of 2 things is going to happen. It's going to either work out or it isn't. If God says, pray for the kid in the wheelchair, either the kid is going to get up out of the wheelchair or he isn't. If God actually says it, he's going to get up out of the wheelchair. If he doesn't, that wasn't actually God that we were hearing. We have to be honest about this. We need to grow deeper in this. We can't put it off on other people. Oh, that's for another time, or maybe they just didn't understand or anything else. No, the first default should be, maybe I wasn't hearing from God, so I need to go back and in that intimate time with God, learn how to hear his voice more effectively. And that's the part of feedback. You can get this feedback multiple times every single day, and you can grow. And as you grow, there's certain exercises that you can go through that'll accelerate that growth. So when you think God is telling you to do something, what do you do with that? Well, the first part is we have to identify some of the things not to do. We all have friends, fellow pastors who think everything that they want is actually coming from the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit told me to get ice cream. The Holy Spirit told me to move to Fiji. I almost did that once, actually. I guess it wasn't God. What's going on here when people are saying this stuff? Because it isn't always God. It's actually us trying to manipulate and using God's name. We have to be real about this if we really want to grow. And we have to learn to discern if it really is coming from God. There's two major tests to this as we start out. First of all, is it biblical? If it isn't biblical, it isn't from God. Plain and simple. That's it. Second, when we actually do it, when we actually step out in it, what's the fruit? Rotten fruit isn't from God. Read again John 15, the abiding. When we abide and we're walking with God in intimacy, he produces good fruit through us. And as we start to get it, we get better at understanding God's timing, and then we can align our lives with what God is showing us, and we start to walk in God's will. But there's one more thing that's important. It's probably more important than all the rest. The one key to it all. You have to be hungry, and you have to want it. You gotta want it. There's nothing in this world that God can't do with a hungry person. He can do anything with you if you get hungry. Most of our people are sitting around watching too much Netflix and playing too many video games while we're running around chasing programs and everything else, and this world itself is spinning out of control around us. Many of us are leading ministries and we're spending too much time in the programs which we craft to try to compete with the world. But here's the thing. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. Communication and travel and technology has changed so much over the last 100 years, even over the last 10 or 20 years. God is just looking for people to rise up, grab a hold of his cloak, and do this in a way that is going to be effective in 2025. So we ask God for the hunger. We consecrate ourselves to his purposes, and we go on this journey together. This isn't a Lone Ranger thing. He's going to show you his will, and it truly is going to be exceedingly more than you could ever hope for or imagine. You can spend 100 hours a week over the next 3 years figuring this stuff out, and that's what I did. Or we can walk this out together as I share what I've learned in these videos. What does God's voice sound like? What's the primary way that he speaks with you? Because I've learned over time how he speaks with me. And it's different for everyone. It's not through random Bible verses. It's not through balloons in the wilderness, although I've tried that. But he speaks to me oftentimes in pictures and through the still small voice. And I've gotten better in discerning that. And so let's find this out together. If you're ready to find out God's will for your life, hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.